This video is brought to you by Magellan TV. Many of you have already subscribed to this new documentary streaming service. For those of you who have, we highly recommend that you check out an episode called Freak Accidents in the House Hazards series. Septic tank explosions, grease fires, and knocking the neck off a helium tank. These are some of the explosive dangers that exist in your home. The bedrooms, kitchen, bathrooms, nowhere is safe. See how these accidents are caused when the team do experiments in a test house. For those that haven't subscribed yet, Magellan TV is a documentary streaming membership service founded by filmmakers, bringing you premium content and diving deep into the subjects you want to learn more about. Magellan TV has the richest and most varied content on history available anywhere. Magellan TV has over 3,000 plus documentary movies, series, and exclusive playlists, many available in 4K. They have ancient, modern, current, early modern, war and biographical history, science, space, and even true crime, which can be watched anywhere on your television, laptop, or mobile device. All the shows are without interruptions from commercials, and we have a special offer where you can check it out all for free. Simple History viewers get a 1-month free trial membership. Just go to try.magellantv.com/simplehistory or click the link in the description below and you can check out our documentary recommendation, Freak Accidents, for free. What was inside this tunnel that killed 520 passengers? The Italian train mystery. Train 8017, March 3, 1944, 050 hours. World War II had been a humiliating and painful experience for the Italian people. Their military campaign in North Africa had ended in disaster, with the loss of all their colonies there, and was quickly followed by the Allies invading Italy itself in the summer of 1943. This resulted in the overthrowing of the Italian fascist government, forcing their leader, the dictator Benito Mussolini, to go into exile. By March of 1944, it seemed the German Nazi regime was surely on the verge of collapse, as it was rumored that soon the Allies would be invading northern France. Then it was hoped it would only be a matter of time before the war in Europe would finally be over, and things could start to return to normal in Italy once again. On the rainy night of March 2, 1944, the overnight steam power freight train 8017 from Battipaglia to Potenza did not pass through the railway station at Balvano in southern Italy. The station master there was not overly worried. Despite the war being all but over in Italy, it was still causing major disruption to an already overburdened and damaged state-run railway system. Therefore, the station master simply presumed the freight train had either been delayed or canceled at short notice, a common occurrence at the time. But later, at 5:10 that morning, when one of the crewmen from the freight train staggered into the railway station, the station master knew something was seriously wrong. The man's face was white with shock, and he seemed totally disoriented, muttering something about them all being dead, hundreds of them. What the station master could make out from the man's almost incoherent babbling was that the freight train with its 47 cars was crammed full of illegal passengers, desperate to get to Naples. The train crew had tried to limit the number of passengers who were getting onto the freight wagons, but they had been overwhelmed with the sheer quantity of people forcing themselves on board. This was of no surprise to the station master, for while this was a freight train with no passenger carriages, it was not uncommon for them to be crammed full of people and black market smugglers, as there was a desperate shortage of passenger services throughout Italy at the time. So the train had set off, and though being pulled by 2 locomotives, it was massively overloaded. And to make matters worse, the locomotives were using low-grade coal. The railway companies were suffering from coal shortages and had to resort to using lower-quality fuel. Therefore, the underpowered and overweight freight train meandered slowly through the Appian Mountains, not able to pick up speed on the ice-covered tracks. So when it came to the long tunnel at Armi that was on an incline in the middle of nowhere, the train had stalled inside, with a few of its rearmost carriages sticking out the back of the tunnel entrance. There are conflicting reports as to why the train stopped, the 2 theories being that the train was unable to pull the weight or had to stop due to an oncoming train. Within minutes, all of the people in the tunnel itself were dead. What had killed them? Since it was about 1 a.m. in the morning, most of the passengers were fast asleep, totally unaware that the train was stuck in the tunnel and struggling to get out of it. As the freight trains desperately revved their engines to get more power and free themselves, this produced more and more carbon monoxide. Because the tunnel had no real ventilation, it quickly filled up with the totally odorless and highly poisonous gas, meaning it gradually suffocated the unsuspecting passengers and crew. Researchers later learned that the train had 2 different locomotives attached, and these trains could not communicate with each other. This was due to the 476 locomotive being Austrian-built and having a right-hand driver. The 480 locomotive was left-handed. This prevented the conductors from the individual locomotives from communicating. It was found that the 480 locomotive tried to restart and move forward, and the 476 locomotive tried to reverse out of the tunnel. A few of the passengers had figured out what was going on and attempted to flee down the tunnel towards its exit, but by now had been too weak to make it, instead collapsing to the ground unconscious as the gas slowly suffocated them too. Horrified by what he had heard, the station master grabbed a lamp and hurriedly organized a rescue team, which set off in a locomotive almost immediately. As the tunnel was just a few miles from the station, they arrived at the scene within 15 minutes, only to find the track in the tunnel was littered with dead bodies everywhere. A short time later, it was discovered at the other end of the tunnel, there were a few carriages at the rear of the train that were sticking out of the tunnel. They found a handful of survivors. All of the people in the tunnel itself were dead. It was later discovered that 520 of the train's passengers died from asphyxiation by the carbon monoxide created inside the tunnel. Even 50 of the rescuers had to be treated for carbon monoxide poisoning as they had entered the fume-filled tunnel in a vain attempt to find survivors. In fact, it would be several hours before it was truly safe to enter the tunnel. The vast amounts of dead bodies were moved and stacked up on the railway station platform, awaiting identification and burial. In the end, most were buried in mass graves in the local cemetery, without any kind of religious ceremony being carried out due to the lack of resources in wartime. As the war was still very much ongoing, the Allied High Command decided to downplay the tragedy, and it was given very little publicity at the time, because they feared it might damage Italy's fragile morale and overshadow the war effort against the Nazis. Though an official inquiry would be eventually held and would conclude that the tragedy had occurred due to a combination of unfortunate circumstances that had ultimately been brought about by the war. Therefore, it concluded that no one was truly responsible for what had happened. Nevertheless, the government didn't want people to learn of this accident that was one of the worst rail disasters of the century. They feared that the people and their allies would blame the government for the lack of quality coal and the restricted passenger trains.